item number 1, which is Plan 21-0522, City of Wisconsin Rapids, request for a certified survey map approval for one lot to dedicate it as a right-of-way at the end of Grove Avenue, east of 16th Street South, parcel ID 3414800, which includes rescinding the previous dedication of the right-of-way associated with the property. Joe, Kyle?
So this item was before you a few months ago. It was approved to dedicate 40 feet within the same vicinity along Grove Avenue Extended. And the ownership of the parcel recently changed, and so the new owner is not willing to dedicate the full 40 feet of right-of-way, rather just 33 feet. So this is again before you to approve the 33-foot dedication rather than the 40 feet. I don't believe, Joe, the previous survey was recorded regarding the right-of-way, but I think it's appropriate to at least rescind also that previous right-of-way dedication. And again, we would recommend approval similar to what was done previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Commission, what are your wishes?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I would move to rescind the previous dedication.
Thank you. Do we need a motion then to approve after we rescind, or?
So it's included as one motion, so the
Okay.
rescission, if you will, would be included within the approval if you approve Plan 210522.
All right, I so move as Kyle stated.
Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a second by Ben. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I don't know if you. I don't know if you guys caught that I was on as well.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, I forgot.
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you,
Oh.
Eric. I forgot you're online, but thank you. All right. Item number 2, we'll go on to Plan 21-1037, Sweps Food Pantry, request for a site plan review amendment to perform site improvements at 2321 West Grand Avenue, parcel ID 3401190. Kyle?
So again, this request is an amendment to a previously approved site plan approval for the SWEPS project. As you can recall, about a month ago, you approved an addition onto the south side of the building. They now have chosen to expand the parking lot area, which is considered a major improvement, and it's before Plan Commission for that approval. They do not intend at this point to make it parking, rather just extending the asphalt area to allow trucks to easily access the back of that garage area. So most of the staff report just carried over from the previous approval, except for the ingress-egress section and the landscaping section. Here you can see the proposed asphalt for the project. And we'll also note that the landscaping plan, did not exist. There is not a landscaping plan that's been submitted. However, the improvements that are proposed with the asphalt would require additional landscaping, and we've added that as a condition of approval, that an updated landscaping plan be provided meeting the requirements outlined within the staff report for landscaping. With that being said, we would recommend approval with the similar conditions that were part of the original approval about a month ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Committee, any questions, thoughts?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations based on the report and the staff recommendations within the landscape plan as well.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Lee. We have a motion and a second to approve the request with the outlined conditions. Any further discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And opposed? That motion carries. We'll move on to item 3 is the conceptual project review, County of Wood, construction of the Public Safeties Facility Jail at 410 Avon Street, parcel ID 3407750, and 431 Saratoga Street. That parcel ID is 3407748. I guess, Sean, you want to start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I would be honored to.
Thank you.
First, I'm Sheriff Sean Becker with Will County Sheriff's Department. I want to thank, Mayor Blazer and the rest of the committee and council members here for the opportunity to speak tonight. I first want to say that I'm really proud of our county board and the approach they took in dealing with this project. It's not anything new that Wood County has been looking at a new facility for more than 20 years. And our current board really took a lot of time and a lot of effort into really looking at this project and looking at the needs from all different angles. There were countless jail tours, countless meetings, many phone calls that were taking place as the county board took this on. So they approved the project recently. So now we're here speaking with you just because, that's the next step of this progress, this process. So they took a team approach, and you're all part of the team now, and I'm proud to say that. There's going to be a presentation that Kurt Bernier is going to give to you here shortly. He's our project manager from the Samuels Group. The Samuels Group is no stranger to projects like this. They've been involved with many projects throughout our state, putting together law enforcement centers and jails. Again, we're taking a team approach, and we're very proud that you're part of that right now. This facility that we're looking at is, the biggest part of it is it's for the public safety in the community, and also our corrections officers and law enforcement officers, not just from the Sheriff's Department, but from every law enforcement agency within Wood County and others. So I'm going to introduce Kurt. If you have any questions at the end, feel free to ask us. The presentation is very similar to the town hall presentations that we did throughout the county before our county board voted on this project. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. Kurt, and thank you so much.
So make sure you ask the difficult questions of the sheriff. So we put together a presentation, and I want to share with you that we showed the county board this presentation just this morning. And I think it's probably key to let you know that you're getting information as quickly as the board is. The board took action earlier this year, which I think most of you are all aware of, to build a new jail. The next slide kind of talks about the reasons why they looked at building a new jail. It was an unsafe condition. They were spending a lot of money to house inmates out of county. There were some liabilities associated with that, lack of capacity. And the right time to build now, like the sheriff talked about, there was decades of discussion, and it was the right time to build in regards to cost-effective borrowing. And that approach is what the county decided to do. The next slide here talks a little bit about some of the history associated with some of the things that are there. The jail, in terms of jail construction, the current jail is a linear jail, which has line in the name. It's basically a long line of cells. That's kind of old mentality in regards to how corrections are done. A podular design, it is more cost effective, it is more staff effective, it is safer. And that was one of the biggest elements associated with that, outside of just not having the right size jail. So what I'm going to show you tonight is conceptual in nature, but that was one of the deciding factors. The capacity is obviously small, but the classification that they're unable to do is also another element. And classification is something that the jail staff has to be able to do when someone enters the jail. It's really identifying how they're going to be able to deal with those inmates based on their conditions, and they were limited or prohibited because of the size. Also, updating the existing facility. There was a lot of issues associated with the existing building, underground infrastructure that was going to have a large investment to put into a facility that didn't meet the safety or the size needs. Coupled with all of the components that are tied in with the operation and efficiency of it. That's why the county decided to move the direction of building a new jail. The next slide talks about the things that they're going to see in gain that's there. There's increased safety, better visibility, and a pod design. There's actually a master control or a pod control that is similar to this, of being able to see everybody in a 360-degree vision rather than this long linear jail. There's obviously issues associated with the safety of those inmates to be able to have that observation, that 24/7 observation. Lower operating costs, not only from the energy efficiency of the building, but also a staffing cost to make sure that it is staff efficient with what we call posts. So there's components that are designed around that as well. And then space for programming. It's a big deal in regards to the corrections side when those individuals come in to the jail. It's not just about locking them up, it's about getting their actions corrected so that they can become productive members of society. And there was no space allowed for that before. This design will provide for that so that hopefully you start to see those bed numbers or those inmate numbers start to come down over the course of the years. You move to the next slide. So when there was the community engagement in the town hall meetings, this is the plan that was shown. It's conceptual in nature. And if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that big box with the red dot in the center, that's the pod that I referenced. And that's really the main reason for this building is being able to get that housing pod in place. And you can see in regards to the configuration of where it is placed on that campus, that small green line that connects from that box over to the courthouse is a secure corridor to be able to bring inmates from jail over to court for their hearings and being able to separate them from the public. The other green boxes, the one that's on the top of that pod, that would be representing the Sheriff's Department. The bottom green box would represent the sally port or the vehicle sally port where individuals would be brought in via squad, and then the doors would close. It's a secure place for them then to be unloaded and taken into pre-booking and then into booking. And then the yellow area was a representation of some parking area. There would be below grade parking there as well as at grade parking. And that was what was the initial concept coming out of the study, okay? And over the course of involvement with speaking with Kyle and speaking with Joe and kind of understanding city ordinances and some of the requirements that you guys are looking for, there's been some discussions with the design team as to what are some things that can be made different or designed different from what our initial concept was, because it's really about getting this jail to fit within this community. And when we get into some of these renderings, you'll see the angle that's been taken. I think when people hear jail, they picture razor wire and they picture these corner watchtowers that are on the building, and that's not what we're building here. We're building a county jail. We're building a facility that's going to fit within the community. It's safe and secure, as the sheriff talked about, not only for the community, but for all the inhabitants inside of the building. So this is where we started when the board approved it, and the next slide will show you where we are today. We've turned it just to confuse you, so we tweaked it a little bit. But you'll see that the box stayed the same. The housing area stayed the same in regards to size, in regards to capacity. It's almost in the same location. But what we did is we removed that. We actually didn't remove the little green line or that corridor. It's just hidden within the big green box. So the concept right now is that the Sheriff's Department would be below that connecting corridor and a side of that connecting corridor, so it will still be a secure connection between the jail and the courthouse. But the concept now is really reducing the footprint. And what that does is it gives us an ability to get closer to your requirements of the setbacks that you have in your ordinance. The other thing that it does is it gives us the ability to build underneath that. It's going to be a better decision cost effectiveness in regards to how to build that secure corridor. So the green boxes still represent the same thing. The bigger green box is Sheriff's Department, just a different footprint. Smaller green box is a sally port. And the sally port, you'll notice, actually got flipped from the Market Street side over to Fifth Street side. And the reason behind that is that we wanted to have front of house. Okay, so the sally port is kind of back of house, and then the other scenario, the sheriff's entrance was going to be off of Fifth Street. And during the design discussion, we wanted to make sure that the front of house was really consistent with the overall campus. So what you'll see in the next configuration will be the layout in regards to what that looks like for traffic flow. The yellow area still represents the parking area that we talked about. There would be some below grade parking as well as at grade parking on the yellow area. And I do want to stress, these are very preliminary. We're still in the point of moving boxes around on the table in regards to how do these departments connect, how are they working together. It's really, a step-by-step process here to make something to work within all the guidelines. So next slide. So this is a proposed site plan. Again, I'm going to stress preliminary. We wanted to be able to represent what that site would look like, or the entire campus would look like. You'll see in this rendering there is something that's missing, and that's the old jail. So the plan is that when the county occupies the new jail in Sheriff's Department, is that the next phase after we move them into their new home is that we take down the old jail. The reason behind that is that the amount of money it would cost to invest to be able to upgrade that square footage is counterproductive. We need to be able to give some additional space here on the site, and it was just a good way to clean up the site. So you'll see that on the right side of that drawing, there is some green space. I will tell you right now that I don't know that all of that will be green space when we're done. It's going to be one of those things that we need to look at parking count. We're going to have to look at the green space requirements. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today, is to kind of get some dialogue about what's your feel on flexibility of some of those ordinances. Because I can take that back to the design team, take it back to our staff, and talk about the things that you are expecting, some of the things that you would be willing to be a little bit flexible with. But this, again, represents that the back of house would be on the Fifth Street side, and the front of house would be on Market. I'm sorry that it's small on the PowerPoint here, but I think you've got drawings there. We're proposing that the connection between the courthouse and the jail, you'll see that there's a part of the building that actually sticks out to the west side there, may actually become the new main entrance to the courthouse, so that it would be a secured entrance. And if any of you have been there recently, you walk in and you're screened as you come through the main entrance, and there's really no place to queue. So you kind of come in and you're standing on an individual. In the winter, if there's several people there, they could be, outside. This would be an opportunity to give a good public main entrance, give some space for queuing, be able to get them into a vestibule or an atrium, and then it would be separating to go into the courthouse. You're going to see the Sheriff's Department, or you're visiting somebody from the jail. So again, very, very preliminary. So these components are kind of what our proposed site plan would look like. If you go to the next slide. We had the design team, and I got to compliment them because we literally made some tweaks last week, and we said we really need to have some renderings that we can show your group tonight so that you get a feel for the sort of building that we're thinking about. So the portion of the building that's a little darker shaded there, that's your existing courthouse. The portion of the building on the right side of the drawing there is what would be the new jail. And you can see that the design team did their best to represent kind of the configuration of that courthouse. So it's an extension to the south with the orientation of the windows, kind of the setback of the roof line to see if we can get those roof lines to line up at that front reveal on the roof. And then the setback of that higher roof area is actually going to be the dormitory. There was some day room space that they were able to reduce in size, to give you a configuration that it's consistent with what's already on the campus there in regards to the height of the building, the look of the building, so that when somebody walks up to or drives past it, wouldn't be able to make a determination of where the jail started or the courthouse started. It's kind of a continuation of the campus that's there. Go to the next slide. We've just given you a couple of views. This is here, that first one was kind of looking from the northwest corner of the campus. This one would be from the southwest corner of the campus. Not quite at the Jackson Street and Market Street intersection, a little bit up Market Street, but you kind of get a feel for the angle that you would see there. You can go on to the next slide. This gives you the representation of that front entrance. You can see that glass area there, kind of a gray shaded area between the two buildings. Again, very preliminary, may not look exactly like that, but we're thinking that may be the main entrance there where that queuing place could take place. And then the last slide, I think we have one more. And then, again, just another front view. And the last slide here is from Fifth Street. So this is looking at the east elevation of the building. You can see where it starts to drop down in grade. I think all of you that know that site shows the topography from Fifth Street to Market. It's about 11 to 12 foot drop in elevation. So mid-block is about a 6-foot transition in elevation. So we're talking about that the loading dock would be down in that depressed area. That small building that's down in that depressed area would be the Sally Port. So that's where the traffic would be from squads to be able to come into the Sally Port and exit the Sally Port off of the street. This would also allow for any deliveries to be off of the street. Right now, the county actually has some deliveries where the truck is parked on the street. They've got to do some unloading of that on the street. So there's a lot of things that this design has addressed to be able to accommodate the function of the campus as well as fitting into the community. So those are the slides. It was quick, short. I wanted it to be that way so that you weren't too bored. And I also wanted to have some dialogue. So is there questions from any of you relative to what I've proposed? Do you have any real hard questions for the sheriff? Because those would be even better. I'm kidding. I guess I'd like to have some dialogue just to kind of get a feel. I know this is the first time you saw it. It was the same way with board members today. It's the first time they saw it, and it's still a work in progress. So
I guess my question for you is, and maybe for Kyle too, is so what questionable things are you kind of curious about, and what flexibility does the Plan Commission have maybe to address
sure.
some of those questionable items on kind of how you want to,
Sure.
or how we feel about certain items?
Good question. One of the first ones would be the height of the building. You can see that the height of that new jail is slightly higher than the courthouse. It's my understanding there's a 45-foot limit in the ordinance. And the existing structure right now, the highest point of the courthouse is about 49 feet. And we've kind of asked the design team, can we get to that 49 feet? We think we're going to be slightly higher than that. We haven't honed in on what that number is. We think it's probably in the lower 50s. So that would be one of those areas. The reason that we've stepped back that portion of the building is so that when you come up, you don't see this big monstrosity, right? So when you're down on the street or when you're on the sidewalk, you're actually looking up, you're going to see that first line of the roof line, and you probably won't even see. Like if you're at the courthouse right now and you're walking into the courtyard, you would probably never know that there is a higher penthouse there. And they follow that same model in regards to this component. The other element would be green space, like I shared with you. I think from a green space perspective, we'll be okay. It's really impervious pavement in regards to what that looks like. Setbacks would be another, and I can show you on the south end there, we've done a representation because we're aware of our neighbors to the south and east to be able to give them as much green space that's there. If you look at the green space that's on the south and east side of that proposed jail on the bottom side, that's actually right now, it's blacktop because there's a retaining wall right on the back side of their property line, and there's blacktop that's there, and the old Red Owl building actually sits in front of that bottom one. So we're looking to enhance that with the green space. We're not sure exactly what the compliance would be with the setbacks from those property lines, so there might be some deviation on those components. But those are a couple of the ones that we're highlighting right now. So they're not significant in regards to, hey, we're asking you to build a 90-foot skyscraper. It would be a couple of feet here or there. And that's really where we are with this flexibility to be able to talk about that. And I think we'll probably get into that discussion when we talk about some zoning items.
So to add to that with regards to what may exist within the zoning code, we do have an overlay district specifically for unique situations like this where you may have a campus type development, and that is the planned development district. So we've discussed with the county the opportunity to come back after they've got a more finalized site design and pursue that planned development district overlay zoning. And that would permit some deviations, as he's alluded to, with regards to height, setbacks, green space, landscaping, and so forth. To put things into perspective, the hospital has an overlay district. More recently, Centralia and the senior housing over here has a planned development overlay district. So again, it's in recognizing the uniqueness of the development and allowing for some deviation, to address that uniqueness. And I think part of the presentation today is to obtain some feedback and perhaps your willingness to review a plan development district moving forward after the two action items tonight. And when I say moving forward, it could be months out. Again, once the design is more finalized, they would come back and make that plan development district request. But again, in investing the time and effort to construct a building that may exceed that height requirement within the zoning district and the other standards, I think it's beneficial for the county and the consultant to have some of that feedback so they're not, right, spending resources and time constructing something that may not be well received within the community, the plan commission, or the council.
Thank you, Kyle. Anybody on the commission have any questions?
I do. Regarding the institutional district, maybe procedurally, we're going from an institutional to an improvement at some point then going forward? Is that?
So the institutional district, if rezoned to institutional tonight, is the underlying zoning district. That will remain. And so the plan development district is an overlay district. So the institutional district is essentially on the bottom. That's the standard that's set for a lot of the zoning ordinance requirements, setbacks, lot size, green space, lot coverage, and so forth. The plan development district is an overlay that allows for deviations from the underlying zoning district. So I think it's beneficial also, and maybe I'm moving ahead a little bit because we're not discussing that, but right now the property is split zone. There are multiple zoning classifications, and the zoning currently is not consistent with the courthouse zoning of institutional. So I think if rezoned to institutional, you're also creating consistency among the entirety of the site with regards to zoning. And so it's very clear the standards that would apply if it's rezoned the entire site once, right, vacation occurs, which is something we haven't talked about, if vacation occurs, and the lots are then combined to create one, right, county campus lot.
That makes sense, yeah.
I should have brought up vacation, I'm sorry, but you can see that Avon Street is adjacent to the existing structure, so we've got building right over Avon Street. We did have a survey, a complete survey done, and the utilities that are in Avon Street serve the courthouse. So it would really be treated almost like a lateral off of the adjacent streets to be able to get into that component. And the other thing that I didn't talk about was the landscape. I'm glad Kyle brought that up. The building itself, the jail, the Department of Corrections has the oversight in regards to the approval of the design of the jail. And one of the things that they frown upon is having large obstructions to view, so people can't hide and duck in around a jail. But we've been able to have them give us some opportunities to do some plantings around a jail. So it's not just this stark building, but there is some limitations. So that's where that balance of, we're not just going to put a stark building out there, but we need to be able to comply. And some of those things on the jail side can be different than what we have up in that green space. It's on the northeast corner, and I'm probably getting into more details than you want. But that's the sort of feedback that we would like to have, that we want to have that flexibility to make sure that we're complying with as much as we can, but there are some other limitations that are kind of tying us into those. So.
Thank you. Susan?
Mr. Chair, yes. I'm probably the oldest person in the room. And with that, I have some sentiment attached to the cohesiveness of the design of the courthouse.
Yep.
And the idea that it would not be overwhelmed by the prominence of the jail.
Yep.
So in that respect, the rather than zoning ordinances, I'm speaking more in terms of just architectural
Appearance.
concerns.
Sure.
I understand full well that you've got a difficulty on what would be the south side with regard to the buffer zone between the jail itself and the existing homes,
Yep.
residential properties. Is there any opportunity for you to slide that setback toward Fifth Street so that the prominence of the courthouse was sustained?
Sure. Yeah, and I didn't get a good angle, but you can kind of see from this drawing is that the front of the jail and the front of the courthouse don't quote me on exactly, but I think they're within 10 feet of one another, okay? So we've done our best to keep it as far east as we can without being right on the neighbor's back door, and then be able to keep those front in line so that you're not just, so it's not like protruding. And I should have given you a better angle. I think the design team's completely aware of that. And that's one of the things the county staff has been saying, you know, we want to make sure that this is cohesive with that campus. So we're doing the best we can in regards to doing that. We're also looking at selecting some materials, and I know that's another meeting that we'll bring to you, but that it doesn't just, that it's not odd, that it's connecting kind of the nature of what's being done there. Precast, symmetry, you know, the symmetry of the windows, all those sorts of things. So that we're enhancing that campus rather than, you know, having something that takes away from the courthouse. So, great point.
Thank you. Council members, any questions?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Eric.
I guess just maybe to Susan's point, with the main entrance being more to the south, where would the parking be? I see there was a little bit of a parking on the south side, but would most citizens have to park all the way on the north by the roundabout and walk all the way to the south to get in?
It's a great question. We actually discussed where that parking would come from, and you're right. We were thinking that a majority of it would probably be on that north end for the staff. You can see that there is going to be parking on that the west side there. For some public parking right by that main entrance. But where that parking ends up being in regards to the public would be along the street there or on that west side, and then staff would have to be remote. So parking location, we think we're going to be within compliance. It's just a matter of how far individuals may have to walk from the employee's standpoint. So.
Thank you, Eric. Tom?
Yeah, and that was going to be one of my questions with
Okay.
with the parking.
Sure.
Across the street from the main entrance right now, parking that's there.
Yep.
And for now, who owns that property? I mean, we own the
Triangle.
triangle part. Is the parking lot the city's too?
Eight.
To my
the-
recollection, I mean, I think.
Directly across Market?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we own a majority of that. There are, I think, 2 properties that are still under private ownership.
Just so we have in the past, or we are currently even, you know, looking to sell that property.
Okay.
And so, depending what would happen there, that may not be parking there in the future.
Okay. So are you proposing a donation to the project, or?
No, I just,
I'm just
so
kidding.
just so everybody's aware of it, because I don't know where to give you that. I don't know what to give you. So I'm not saying it's going to happen.
No, that's
But
great
because
information. We can
nothing
take
has
that back to the
Because nothing
county.
has happened.
Yeah.
But it could turn out that the only parking I think you may have left would be the Gainer parking lot.
Sure. No, that's a great point. That's good.
Um,
That's good information to know.
It's something that the city, you know, I purchased the property a number of years ago, trying to work out something to sell that, and make it into something different.
Sure.
That hasn't happened. You know, tax-wise or whatever, hopefully it does. Maybe who knows, maybe it'll park. Who knows?
Sure. Sure.
But just so everybody's aware of that may not be left down the road.
Sure.
Could be 2 years or could be 20 years.
Sure.
So just so,
Good to know.
that's something I think to take into consideration. And then, where'd you say as far as bringing the prisoners in or whatever?
So on this drawing, it would be on the back side, that small little box that juts out from the addition there. We would propose that, and then the squads would come down Baker, or they could be moving north on Fifth as well, and then drive down into that lot, and then it would be an enclosed garage, and that little bump out that's there. So there would be a door, overhead door on either side of that, so the squad would pull in there. It would be outside of, where anyone, that little white box that's down in the hole there, is where that would take place. So everything would be behind doors. You'd see a squad pull in there, doors would close, their business would take place behind the doors.
On Market Street, that then would be totally closed off, as far, because the street will be vacated, so, I mean, that's gonna be.
Avon Street would be the vacation market
Right,
still
right, yeah,
open.
right.
Correct,
Avon would be the vacated, but
Correct.
it'd be, so,
correct, yep.
so possibly you'd get, I don't know, well, I don't know if you get more parking there or not.
Yeah, that's one of the things, like I said, with the count, this is very preliminary. We need to go through that next phase of design, start to figure out where does the parking go, what's that count? But it's a great question.
And then with that Sally Port, I had a question. Inmate needs medical transport. What's the access then for an ambulance in that area?
The ambulance will fit inside that building.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so-
just back in then, because it's only a one-way, is that correct?
Right now, we're actually showing it's drive-through.
Okay.
We need to do the study to make sure we can make that corner.
Sure.
It's our intent to have a drive-through.
Okay.
I don't want to be a part of having one where you pull in and you pull out.
Yeah.
It's really a key element to be able to get the ambulance in there and then get them out. Typically, we size it that a bus can fit in there. So
Okay.
you pull the bus in, close the doors, and the doors will actually close. They won't hit the bus.
Sure.
And then be able to pull out. So,
Thanks.
yep.
The demolition of the existing jail, is that going to be scope that's kind of included with this project, or is that something that'll be separate down the road?
Did you say the demo?
Yes.
It's included, but it's the next phase. So it's part of the overall budget. We do need to build the addition first, move them in, and then the demolition would take place, and then the site work that we're showing would obviously be the last thing we'd do before finishing up the job. Other questions?
I guess my personal opinion, I don't have an issue with exceeding the height limits, especially that this will be the only time in our lifetime that we'll see this project being completed. And at the investment that the county's making and the great interest rates, that, you know, I think it needs to be built right. You know, the 90-foot might be kind of a little tall, but, you know, if there's that 10-foot that makes things work better, I think it's probably prudent to do that. Green space, I'm in favor of green space. I'm sure the residents in the neighborhood would be, but obviously we know state jail inspectors and they're going to have requirements. And so I understand that, you know, if there's a certain limit on trees or shrubbery in certain locations, then I think we have to kind of go along with that because that is for safety and security.
Sure.
That's my opinions. Anyone else have anything before we move on to the next item?
Sure, appreciate the dialogue.
Chief? Please, go right ahead.
I apologize for being late. I meant to actually introduce Sheriff Becker in this project. Wisconsin Rapids PD, we look forward to this project, and we're fully behind it. We have been involved in the planning. Our input has been well received by the county. We look forward to this project moving forward, just to provide the services it will provide to not only us, but every other agency in the county and the citizens of the city. With that said, Wisconsin Rapids PD, we support this project and we hope that it moves forward.
Thanks, Chief. All right, any other comments? Council, we're good? Okay, so we can move on to item 4, which is Plan 21-1038, County of Wood. Public hearing and action on a request from the County of Wood for an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan, specifically map 7-2 future land use map to classify 410 Avon Street, parcel ID 3407750 from a commercial and residential classification to an institutional land use classification, and 431 Saratoga Street, parcel ID 3407748 from a commercial classification to an institutional land use classification. Kyle, do you want to introduce it?
Sure, thank you. So as you can recall, this was, the rezoning was before the commission about a month ago, a little over that. And there was an error on my part to not identify the clear section in the zoning ordinance regarding consistency with the comprehensive plan. So we postponed action previously on the rezoning and brought this back today with 2 items, one being an amendment to the comprehensive plan, and 2 being the rezoning that would follow after an amendment is done. And so the staff report provides quite a bit of background detail and standards of review into the request. I won't go into too much detail, but ultimately we do find this to be in the public interest with regards to the comprehensive plan amendment. At this time, we haven't received any input from the public. We do notify citizens within and businesses within a 300-foot radius surrounding the property, and obviously there's a public hearing tonight to provide further comment. But again, at this point, we have not received comment since the recent notification. Secondly, with regards to consistency with the remainder of the plan, we feel as though that an institutional land use classification is appropriate because it does provide a buffer between the residences to the east and the downtown commercial versus, it staying commercial and a restaurant or higher intense use, retail use occurring on the site moving forward. And so while we recognize the project that the county is pursuing, we also have to look at this, if the project was not moving forward, what would the intended uses or the zoning classifications be in the event that the project didn't move forward. So taking that, that higher look on the project, we feel as though the institutional land use classification is appropriate, it's consistent with the plan, and wouldn't harm the public. And therefore, we would recommend approval of the comprehensive plan amendment.
So I guess at this point, I'll open up the public hearing at 5:42 on this request. I'll call 3 times for anybody that wants to speak against it. For a second time, I'll call if anybody wishes to speak against it. And lastly, does anybody wish to speak against the amendment to the city's comprehensive plan? Seeing none, anybody wish to speak in favor of it? And the second time, does anybody wish to speak in favor of the amendment? And lastly, does anybody wish to speak in favor of the amendment to the comprehensive plan? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing at 5:43. Commission, what is your wishes?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to amend the city's comprehensive plan to classify 410 Avon Street from a commercial and residential classification to an institutional land use classification, and 431 Saratoga Street from a commercial classification to an institutional land use classification.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ryan, and a second by Ben. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? That motion carries. We'll move on to item 5, Plan 21-0816, County of Wood. Public hearing and action on a request from the County of Wood for a zoning map amendment request to rezone 410 Avon Street, parcel ID 3407750, and 431 Saratoga Street, parcel ID 3407748, from a B2 general commercial district to an R2 mixed residential district to an I1 institutional district. Kyle?
Thank you. So first, I want to point out an error in the staff report on page 23 of 42. I wrongly identify the, and this should have been for the previous item, I apologize, the institutional land use classification, and it should be the government/public/institutional classification. So just want to clarify that within the staff report, that was not my intent to include the industrial classification. With regards to the rezoning, again, most of this carried over from the previous staff report, except for the item regarding consistency with the comprehensive plan. I think it's clear now, if the comprehensive plan is amended to that government public/institutional classification, that the rezoning would also be consistent. And again, I feel as though when you take into consideration the surrounding zoning districts, that the institutional zoning classification would create that buffer, that transitional zone from the residences to the higher intensity downtown commercial district. With that being said, I also want to note that the I-1 district standards when it comes to lot coverage and lot size and setbacks are also a little bit less than the B2 district, or they're not as intense. So, right, you've got to have more green space with the institutional district than you would have to have, for example, in the B2 district. So again, I think that also confirms the intensity and the transitional nature of the district versus its current zoning of B2. So we would again recommend approval of the zoning change from the B2 and R2 to the I1 institutional district.
Thank you. With that, at 5:46, let's open the public hearing. I'll call 3 times. Anybody wish to speak against the request to change the zoning or to make the zoning map amendments? And for a second time, anybody wish to speak against it? And lastly, does anybody wish to speak against the request? All right, moving on. Anybody wish to speak in favor? And for a second time, does anybody wish to speak in favor of the request? And lastly, does anybody wish to speak in favor? All right, seeing none, at 5:47 PM, let's close the public hearing. Commission, what is your wishes?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to rezone 410 Avon Street and 431 Saratoga Street from B2 General Commercial District to I1 Institutional District.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the request. Any further discussion?
Who was the second?
I'm sorry, Ben was. Ryan and then Ben.
And just to be clear, the motion does include 431 Saratoga as well. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing nothing further, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody oppose? Seeing none, that motion carries. We're on to item 6, which is adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by Ben, second by Ryan to adjourn. All in favor say aye.